Episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. The CIA has issued a new assessment suggesting that COVID-19 most likely originated from a laboratory in China, marking a shift from its earlier position that there was not enough evidence to determine the origin. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of a 3,000-year-old city in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region in the southwest of the country, now confirmed as the earliest known urban settlement in southern China. Dating to the early Shang dynasty, circa 1600 through 1050 BC, the Niaoluchong site in Gongchengyao Autonomous County near Guilin spans approximately 23,100 square meters, offering invaluable insights into ancient southern Chinese civilization. The resulting cash crunch has led to underpaid civil servants, rising labor disputes, and cuts to public services like education and healthcare. Meanwhile, housing values continue to depreciate as prices in major cities have fallen for 17 consecutive months. Experts warn that while using apartments to settle debts offers a temporary fix, it reflects deeper structural issues in China's economy. Obviously. This week, Qatar-based Al Jazeera published a piece about one Jane Meng, a pseudonym for a 31-year-old wealthy owner of an import-export business from Shanghai, to explore the issue of China's ongoing millionaire exodus. A senior Philippine official disclosed that the US military has relocated its Typhoon, not to be confused with Typhoon, missile launchers within the Philippines. These launchers, capable of firing long-range and multi-purpose missiles, have been moved from Laoang airfield to an undisclosed location on Luzon. China's property meltdown has since 2021 destroyed around $18 trillion of Chinese household wealth, according to an estimate by Barclays, equivalent to around $60,000 per household, eclipsing the losses suffered by Americans in the financial crash of 2008 through 2009. Hello, everybody. Let's jump in. It's a pleasure to see you here. This is a first for me. I'll be making this channel now for about 5 years, 1,200 videos, and this is the first time I have done a live broadcast. I can see you here in the chats. It's great to have many of you here. Zenith Dawn, welcome. The Leading Indicator, Proud European, Warrior 1, T-Will 357, who I always enjoy your banter and your lines with every episode. I'm always impressed. People say they're impressed that I produce videos every day. I'm impressed that you can watch these videos every day and come up with something witty. Chuck, Deliberate, Fendilic, Zenith, everyone, Glenn, James, Fox, everyone, welcome to this live stream. For the longest time, I never really thought to do a live stream. One of the reasons for that was I thought that I wasn't particularly interesting, and that the majority of viewers were really just there for the updates on China. And I've always tried to produce content that was sort of quite dense, very information focused, very sober, so you could sit and get your 8 to 10 minute digest of China news and sort of not really focus on myself or my personal side of things. But for the longest time, I guess over 1,000 episodes, and over the years of doing this, there were many people who wanted me to do some sort of live stream to discuss the channel, to talk about insider baseball, I think is what they call it. And I sort of said when the channel got to 100,000 subscribers that we would do something. Well, this is that something. I'm back in New Zealand. I'm filming this at the home of a family member. I very much appreciate that. It's a little bit of a boring background, the white. I hope you don't mind. It is a beautiful morning here. It's about 9 a.m. In New Zealand. This should be going up the early afternoon if you're in North America. If you're in Europe, it's probably the evening. I think it's about 8 p.m. in London. I'm not sure. If someone's in London or Western Europe, they can correct me. And it's morning in New Zealand and Australia. Unfortunately, for those who are in East Asia, or maybe Western Australia, it's the middle of the night. So my apologies, you may have to watch this on repeat. Yes, so good morning here, good afternoon. If you're in North America, you may be watching the Super Bowl in a few hours. So I will try not to go too long. But yes, it's wonderful to finally do this. We hit 100,000 subscribers quite quickly, actually. It took many years of slow growth, and then in January, the channel jumped from, I think it was about 80,000 to what is now 120,000. Now that speed of growth has slowed back down, but there is a new normal which is a little bit higher. But it's been amazing to see the community grow over the last month. There are a lot of new community members that are watching every day. And then of course there are those of you who have been with the channel for years. So this video here is sort of my sort of small, humble way of expressing thanks for all the support. This video will not be like a regular China update video. This is really for the audience who just want to come together as a community and talk about the channel. I'll be answering some of your questions. It will be really talking about the background of the channel and myself, if you're interested in that. It's also very casual. It's a very sort of casual, friendly, community-focused video. This will not be like a regular China update where we go deep into a particular topic and it's very fact-heavy and very dense to digest. This is much more casual. This is like we're at a meetup. Something I like to do when I go to new cities. John Weston, welcome to the channel. Thank you for subscribing. Welcome to the community. One of the things I like to do when I travel to a new city, I was recently in Sydney, for example, where we did this, is do subscriber meetups. This, in the past, was the best way for me to interact with you guys, the community, the audience, get a sense of what you do, network a little bit, get feedback on the channel, and also chat. So what I want to do here is basically that. It's like a subscriber meetup. It's very casual, it's very relaxed. There will be people coming in and out. The numbers will fluctuate. Feel free to come for a few minutes, and if you want to go away and come back later, that's fine. It's going to be very casual. You're not going to miss anything in terms of like China related. You're not going to be behind if you miss something we discuss, so not to worry. By the way, I should also say, I've never done this before, and I'm not very technically savvy, so you'll have to forgive me if I make mistakes during the live stream. One of the questions from TWill357 is how many showed up, I think. I'm not getting all the comment there. How many showed up at the meeting in Sydney? We had 3 meetings in Sydney, and each meeting was about a dozen or so people. And so, yeah, that was really, really nice. So proud to be a long-time listener. Thank you, Kevin. I'm tremendously honored and proud to have the community here that we have. And it's always a pleasure to join you wherever you are, whether it's in the evening if you're in Asia, or in the morning in North America when we produce these episodes every day. So thank you. Ron, Pennsylvania, USA, saying thanks for your work. Thank you, Ron. I would love to visit Pennsylvania. In fact, I may be in North America later this year, in which case I'd love to do some subscriber meetups in North America. I've been invited to an event in DC. So if I go to that, I'll be in DC, and I would like to go to a few other places and do some subscriber meetups. So that's something for later this year. Now, on this theme of joining you in the morning, I am, of course, typically based in China. At the moment, I'm in New Zealand, where I'm filming this, which is good because the internet here is actually better. In China, you have to use a VPN to go on YouTube, and so that's also another reason why a live stream hasn't really been on the cards, because in China the internet situation with the VPN is too difficult. It typically takes about an hour to upload a video when I do these videos, whereas in New Zealand it takes about 2 minutes to upload a video. But yes, I'm typically in China when Nick, thank you very much for the support, very much appreciated. Thank you, Nick. Cheers, Tony. Thanks for your unwavering bravery. I think firefighters and soldiers and policemen are brave. I don't know if I'd call myself brave. Sometimes there are inconveniences, and it's a suboptimal situation doing it from China. But as I've said before, I think it's very important that we're having informed conversations about China, and there are very few people on the ground in China. And so even though there is risk, and perhaps we can talk about that later when we go through the questions, there is definitely risk, and there are times where I do feel very uncomfortable and concerned. The fact of the matter is, you need to have people on the ground to make sure that what we're covering is accurate, so we can have those informed conversations. And I'm a young man. I don't have a young family. I don't have kids, and so I think it's a risk that one can take. Travel with love. Thank you very much for the support. It's very much appreciated. Travel with love. Thank you, Mr. Tony, for sharing your insights-filled videos. Wishing you and folks good health, success, and happiness. Much love. Thank you very much, Travel with Love. Very much appreciate the support. Now, what I was saying was I typically release these videos in China, which is in the evening. Half of the audience is in North America. We've got a wonderful, rich North American community that with China Update. And so many say that they listen to China Update when they have their morning coffee. Now, of course, it's quite late in China for me, so I can't have coffee. But this is something that has always been... Adrian, great job, Tony. Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. That is very generous. Thank you very much. As I've said before, the channel relies primarily on subscriber support, so this sort of support is very much appreciated. Thank you, Adrian. For me, for the longest time, I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have my morning run, and then I'd typically have a coffee and listen to my favorite podcasts or watch my favorite YouTube channels, but especially podcasts. Go for a little walk, have a coffee. And when some of you would say that you would listen to my channel over coffee in the morning, for me, this was one of the biggest honors. This is when I knew I had made it as a YouTuber, when people would say they would listen to the channel over coffee. Of all the things that people point to as different success on a channel, whether it's a subscriber count or the amount of views in a month or revenue or whatever, the fact that so many of you said that you listened to my content while you were having your morning coffee, for me, was one of the greatest honors, because that's the time where I would listen to my favorite podcasts and channels. So that's an amazing thing. We've got another support, Meerline Lin 8. Be safe, informed conversation with the folks in China. Few and far between, and very important. Thank you. $20 US. That is very generous. Thank you very much. And I know that you've been with the channel for a long time. I always appreciate your comments and your support. So thank you so much. John, thank you too. Very much appreciated. Got some emojis there. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. So yeah, having the coffee in the morning while watching the channel was wonderful, but I always felt bad that I couldn't share the coffee with you because it's the evening. But because I'm now filming this in New Zealand, it is actually the morning. And so for the first time, I have my coffee here. This is a local New Zealand place in my hometown. I'm from a place called Taranaki in New Zealand, and this is a wonderful little cafe. So for the first time, it is my pleasure to share a coffee with you all as well. So cheers. It's very good. So I'll be sipping away as we go through the broadcast. And yes, it is my honor to finally, live, be able to now have a coffee with you all as we go through this broadcast. JD, spelled D-E-E, who has also been a fierce supporter of the channel, a wonderful supporter of the channel. Thank you for your support here, $10. Yes, DC. Thank you, Tony, just in case you didn't get my coffee purchase. No, I certainly got your coffee purchase, and I have the coffee very much. And later in the video, we're going to be going through a Q&A. I haven't seen the questions, so I put up the post asking paid supporters. I gave them the first opportunity to ask questions. That's gone into the PowerPoint, but I'm also going to be just taking your questions throughout the episode. So we'll just be talking for some time. People will be coming in at different times, joining and then leaving. And so we'll just, like I said, this is very much a casual broadcast. Feel free to come in for 5-10 minutes and watch and then leave and come back. That's fine. Jay, I saw that you did ask some questions. It is probably in the Q&A below, so we will see later. But yes, DC is on the cards probably. I had a meeting with. Actually, I can't say until I leave China. There are a few things. As I've said, I will likely be leaving China this year permanently. We'll maybe talk about that later. There are some things for security purposes I can't actually talk about publicly, but after I've left China, I will be able to. That's just a safety thing while I'm in the country. It's just unfortunately part of living in what is essentially, frankly, an authoritarian country, and that's just how life is there currently. T.S. Jasmine, another very generous donation. Thank you, $20. That is very generous. You are the first video I watch every morning. You are a dog. Are you a dog person? Have you ever had a pet? I love dogs. I like cats. Cats are nice, but I really love dogs. I like all dogs. My mother has small dogs, and they're very cute and they're nice. But I actually like pugs. They're quite a small breed. But for me, I like big dogs personally. In Asia, I've lived in Asia for almost a decade. It's difficult to have big dogs there, especially because I'm traveling a lot. But if I was to ever come back to New Zealand permanently, which would eventually happen at some point in the future, you've got parks, it's very green, you've relatively large properties in the suburbs, and so I would definitely have a big dog, something like a Labrador or a Golden Retriever, Doberman. I guess it would probably also depend on what my wife, I'm not married currently, but I hope to be married one day, and it would depend on what she wants. But no, I love especially big dogs. Something about big dogs I really like. Thank you for the question. Another from Maurice, $5 donation. Thank you so much. Deserving of my first supercharge ever. I listened to you when I was living in China, and you continue to be accurate and truthful. Amazing work. Thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. The point of me starting the channel, and we'll maybe talk about this more later, was that I felt like it was very important that we had informed conversations about China, whether you were pro-engagement, whether you were like a big fan of China and China's rise, or whether you were concerned about China's rise and the West's engagement with China, or you're concerned about the system, or if you're very anti-China, wherever you are on that spectrum, whether you're pro or anti or in the middle or curious, I think we can all agree that you need to have informed conversations about the country. And I felt that what was on YouTube especially, there was a lot of great stuff if you're interested in social commentary, political commentary, punditry, but I felt that it was lacking sort of sober-grounded exploration of the country. And so that was one of the reasons I started the channel. And as we'll talk about later, I didn't think it would go to this size. I thought it was super niche, but I thought even if a few hundred people watched, it also kept me on the game. It kept me having to continue my research every day so that I had something to present, and it's sort of grown from there. So thank you very much, and thank you for the financial support. I have to pop back up. There's been a few actual donations. Thank you. Ricky Long, $25. Thank you. That is very generous. Thank you, sir. And Paul 3CH, 50 Canadian dollars, I think, CA's Canadian dollars, which I think is just a little under US dollars, so that is also very generous. Thank you for your hard work and perseverance. It is my pleasure, Paul, to have such an amazing community here with you all. Makes it very easy to be persistent. I started the channel because I thought it was important to be discussing this stuff and to be sharing this. It was also a hobby. I was passionate about it myself. I came to China to try and understand the country. I spent years doing that. So it's easy to be persistent, one, if you enjoy your work, and two, if you have an amazing community of people that are supporting you and following you on that journey. So it's really me who should be thanking you and you all, and it's deeply appreciated. Captain Nemo, I like that name, it's very cool. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the crazy effort over the years for our benefit. Next to impossible to find reliable information on China, if you could tell us later a bit about your background and path to here. Thank you once again. Again, it's that the idea of China is quite a difficult place. If you don't have training or experience, it can feel a little bit difficult to try to begin to understand the country, especially if you haven't been there either. And so I wanted high quality information, and I try to make it high quality. You'll ultimately be the judge of that. That is accessible to regular folks. Whether you have an economics background, an international relations background, whether you have a language, like you speak the language, or not, you could have none of that background. I wanted it to get that balance between quality but also accessibility, right, so that anyone, no matter your background, could follow and understand. And yes, I will talk about my background, my understanding. I've been told that some of the questions talk about that, so we'll definitely cover that as we go through the Q&A. Thank you for the generous support. Matthew, $10 and a thank you emoji. Thank you, Matthew, very generous. By the way, I should say there's lights going past, so it's morning here, and it's I think 9:30 almost a.m. in New Zealand. This house is actually facing, it's in a suburb, but it's one of the main roads, the arteries that take the suburb into the city, and so I think there's people driving past to work. Hopefully you're not hearing it, but you'll probably see lights shoot past. And this is sort of natural light coming in the morning, and it's a beautiful day. It's wonderful that I can look up and see the blue sky while I talk to you all. And also, please let me know if the audio is okay. So I'm using a mic that my brother, I have a brother, a younger brother, has kindly lent me, and I'm using the mic. So hopefully the audio is okay. Let me know if that's coming through okay. We're sitting at about 500 people viewing live at the moment. That's wonderful to see. Thank you, Matthew, again for your support. It looks like, there's been a few other super chat donations, so I'll actually read through those as well. The shared test, I'm sorry, the text is quite small, so it's difficult to see your name, but the $10 donation is very much appreciated. I have you on while driving my morning and with your morning coffee. I find all of the geopolitical stuff interesting, and also how US policy affects China. Yes, well, thank you. It's like I said, it's wonderful that you can listen while you drive and have your coffee. I'm glad I can join you for this coffee today. A very good place, this one, actually. If you're ever in New Zealand, I'm not sure what the name is, but if you see a place with this design, it's a very, very good coffee. Yes, the geopolitical stuff, I personally find that the most interesting. I have, my background is more in law and policy and finance, so I can talk about that, and that is obviously very important, especially since a lot of my clients in my consultancy are more interested in the financial side, and so the episodes are heavy on the financial side. But I think a lot of people, myself included, find the geopolitical situation interesting to follow, and of course it's very relevant. To take an obvious example, the Russian invasion of Ukraine affected the entire world in many ways. Supply chains, inflation, budgets and governments, and of course those on the ground who are being affected, it affects them tremendously. And so geopolitics is not just some sort of irrelevant thing that is fun to watch, it affects us all. And China being such a big country, and China and the US being the largest economies in the world, the US being the biggest, the Chinese being the second biggest in nominal terms, that relationship is so consequential. I have some people tell me, why do you focus so much on US-China relations? I mean, I do focus, we discuss European-China relations, we discuss China's relations with Japan, with Australia, with India, with Southeast Asian countries, but we do primarily focus on US-China, and I think there's an obvious reason for that. The US, of course, is the most important country in the world today, and will likely continue to be the most important country for probably decades, unless something catastrophic happens. I expect that the US will continue to be the most, one of the most, if not the most consequential, important, influential country in the world, at least for decades to come. And China is in Asia, it's the most important Asian country, and it's an incredibly consequential country in the world. And so the relationship between the US, which maintains the global order, which has been built first around the British Empire and then later the American system. It's Anglo-American, it's Western, and it is the status quo power, and China is seeking to challenge that status quo. And so that relationship, I think, is the most important relationship today in terms of countries. And so a lot of the coverage has to be on US-China developments, and will continue to be on US-China developments. So thank you for the statement and for the support. Emon Kyle, I think, Coyle, thank you very much for the support, for the support there, £5. I very much hope to get to the UK this year as well, so I'm looking forward to some meetups in London. Tom Fairfax, £5. Thank you very much again for your support. Very much appreciated. Alan Burke, $10. Thank you very much. Thank you for the years of great content. The pleasure is all mine. Like I said, for me, it's very easy to keep it up when you have such an amazing community. Mr. Wong, $5 Aussie. It was, by the way, I was in Sydney a few days ago. Always wonderful to visit Australia. Being in New Zealand, we're very close to Australia. It's a 3-hour flight from Auckland, and Sydney was absolutely beautiful. It was wonderful to do these 3 subscriber meetups in Sydney, but just the harbour is such a stunning city. If you're watching and you've never been to Australia, I would highly recommend, if you have the opportunity. It is a beautiful country, great people. Sydney is lovely. It's sort of a big city vibe, although I've lived in places like Beijing and Shanghai, so Sydney to me feels like a very small city. And there's every morning I did a 10k run around the harbour, and you could see the Opera House and the Botanical Gardens and Barangaroo on the other side, and then go under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It was tremendously beautiful, so always lovely to go to Australia. The question, would like to be married someday, eh? How's that going? Any plans on Friday? I hear some Chinese woman will marry you and pay you like $100,000. I don't know about that. But yes, of course I'd like to be married one day. That would be lovely. It would be lovely to start a family, very much so. Navi, $20 donation. Thank you very much. Glad to hear you will be relocating. Your work is crucial, and I am concerned about your safety there. Cheers. Try not to be too concerned about my safety. I am concerned at sometimes myself, but I don't want you to be concerned or worried about that. I try to be very careful. It is quite the balancing trick. There is a risk. I'm very careful with what I communicate on the channel. There's never been a time where I think we need to discuss something and I haven't because I've worried for my safety. I always discuss what I think needs to be discussed. Sometimes when it is something that is a little bit close to the line, I'm a little nervous or anxious, but I still discuss it, and I'm just careful with how I communicate it. Yes, I've lived there for some time. I sort of know where the red line is, and I'm careful not to cross it, but I still communicate what needs to be communicated, just how I communicate it. and getting that balance right. And people say like, oh, when you leave China, your content is going to change. It's probably going to become more assertive or aggressive. No, when I leave China and I continue, I will still continue to do the style of broadcast that I do on China Update. That won't change. I may feel a little less anxious talking about things because I'll feel much safer, but the type of content won't change. Like I said, I've never avoided talking about something because I'm worried about safety. I'm just careful with how it's communicated, and I communicate it in a way that allows you to get the information, but also protects myself. Yes, let me go back up the comments. I'm working the way through the comments here. Tom Fairfax, thank you again, Tom, for the support. Me again, my brother-in-law is from New Plymouth. Love your work. New Plymouth is a beautiful, I mean, if you're ever in New Zealand, it's a little bit out of the way. So New Plymouth was first founded by settlers from Plymouth in England in 1842, and it's a beautiful little town. Now, no offense to anyone listening who's in Plymouth, but I've been told that New Plymouth is a little bit nicer than Plymouth in the UK. No offense, I'm sure Plymouth in the UK is also very lovely too, though. Timothy Hall, $20 US. Thank you, Timothy. Very generous. Andrew, what's the best way for the average Westerner to interact with average Chinese? Is Red Note still a viable option, or is that fully segregated now? That's a good question. It depends what you want to talk about. I have a friend who lived in China for some time. He's a physicist. He's actually now back in Europe. He uses language apps. So there are apps, I can't think of any of the names, but if you Google, these are these apps where you can connect with people who also use the app and you can practice languages. And he has found that if you're wanting to interact with people from other cultures, those sort of apps are not really censored or controlled because it's typically a one-on-one conversation, and they're quite sort of small. They're not like these big technology platforms. And so maybe look up apps where they're like language partner apps, and you can connect with people and talk. That is if you want something that's unfiltered. I think Red Note, 小红书, like Little Red Book, it's the literal translation of that, has been in the news lately. We've discussed it on the channel, so I won't repeat their coverage here. But the concerns, of course, is censorship. The concern is that there's been a segregation between who you're talking to. But frankly, if you're not talking about sensitive stuff, a lot of these platforms are probably fine. You could hop on WeChat if you know people already in China. That's if you're doing it online. Of course, the best way to interact is actually to go to the country. And now, if you've not been politically outspoken, and if you're only going for like a week or 2 weeks, and you're staying at a hotel, an international hotel, and you're in one of the major cities, you'll probably be fine. You'll probably enjoy it. There's some difficulties in living there, which you'll see, but you're only there for a week, and so you'll be on that honeymoon period, so it'll probably be okay. China is a hard place to live for a long period of time. It's a hard place to be if you're not in the major cities, but if you're just a tourist and you're staying at a nice hotel, and like I said, you haven't been politically outspoken about China, you'll probably have a good time. You'll be in East Asia as well. You can also visit Taiwan. You can also visit Japan. You can also visit Southeast Asia. It's a few hours from Shanghai or Beijing. So that is also a wonderful way to meet regular Chinese. Now, I will say though, on that point, if you're talking to Chinese who speak English, because I assume that you don't speak Mandarin, if you don't speak Mandarin and you're speaking English, then you're already got a bit of a biased sample. If someone speaks English, they're probably a bit more international. They're probably traveled. They're probably more cosmopolitan. And so you're not really getting the sort of quote-unquote average Chinese if they're speaking English. They could well be from the urban elite. They're more highly educated. They're more cosmopolitan. So yeah, if you speak Mandarin, you can hop in a taxi and talk to the taxi driver. You can go to a small town and go to a restaurant and talk to people, which is what I like to do. One of the things that I enjoy doing is actually just talking to regular people every day about the developments we cover on China Update. because it is useful to get an idea in Mandarin what they think about a certain development, and then see what people say. This is sort of like, these are anecdotal, but sometimes I find that if you have the macro analysis, you have the data, and sometimes it's useful to get those little anecdotal data points. And if there is consistency, continuity between the macro level and the anecdotal level, then I think that is very telling. And this actually helps inform me. When it comes to what I present to you on China Update. Very much so. We've been covering the economy, for example, for some time, and the difficulties in the economy, including household consumption, consumer confidence. The data, both international, which is independently collected, as well as the official data, show that, which comes from the People's Bank of China, China Central Bank, shows that consumer confidence is low, business confidence is low. That's what the data tells us. When I talk to people, when I talk to small business owners, when I talk to young families, when I talk to taxi drivers, or people who drive people, it doesn't necessarily have to be a taxi driver. You go to the airport, there are people that will just drive you to their hotel in their own car. Maybe they drive a Tesla. Last time I flew into Pudong International Airport, a woman drove me in her Tesla. All these different people, small business owners, whatever, people who own larger businesses, manufacturing. I asked them, what is your feeling about the economy? And still, it is very pessimistic. Very pessimistic. This is what I'm hearing. So you can see this. There is this match between the macro data, the official data, and the anecdotal data points. And so for me, that tells me that the story about the poor state of the economy, the pessimism with households, the pessimism with businesses, even the pessimism within the public sector. I was in Beijing about a couple of months ago, and I have a mutual friend who's from, he is from, what is the province? Hunan in the south. And he's a sort of a mid-sized developer who works with the local government. And people say that I'm pessimistic about the economy. He was much more, he was pessimistic on steroids. So he's deeply concerned. Now, he's from a lower tier city where it really is quite bad, especially the government finances, the fiscal situation. And so talking to him, it really does, and others, reinforces. I know that the word narrative, when it comes to media, is sort of a pejorative, pushing a narrative or forming a narrative, but it is a useful term to use, narrative. That is, how do we think about a particular story? And I use narrative in the neutral sense of the word narrative here. The narrative that the economy is not doing well, and there is pessimism, and that there is a particularly concerning state in the lower tier cities, in the poorer parts of the region, both fiscally for the local government, as well as in terms of growth and asset prices for households. I believe, based on both the macro data and the anecdotal evidence, that this narrative is accurate. I think this is accurate. And this is why I continue to present the information that I do in a way that sort of conforms to that. And again, I know narrative has a bit of a bad connotation, but I think it is useful we sort of think, I think, in stories, and it is a way to keep ideas in your head. You have a basic idea of what's going on. I believe that this narrative is accurate. Now, if that changes, then the coverage will change. But I think that is accurate, and that's why we continue to frame our coverage in that way. Thank you again for the support. I think it's Jackal. Hi from Melbourne. Hello, thank you for the support. 20 Australian dollars. Thank you. Melbourne is also a beautiful city. I did not visit Melbourne this trip. I was in Sydney, but Melbourne, which I think now is actually the biggest, population-wise, is now the biggest city in Australia. Melbourne's also a beautiful city, and I'd love to visit. I hope to visit in the next few months, which I'll do a subscriber meetup there. Continue to go through some of the messages. Bohemian, you've been a member for 29 months. Thanks again for your channel content. It is my pleasure. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm not very technology savvy, so I'm trying to go through the comments. Eric, thank you very much. You've also been a member for some time. I'm glad I could add those little little symbols next to member names. So you've got the pandas who've been with me for some time. $20 US. Thank you for your support. AC, who's been with the channel for some time as well. Thank you for the support. Congrats, Tony. Here's to another remarkable year for China Update. Will you be traveling around Asia more often after you fully transition to YouTube? Great question. Yeah. So my promise was that I would leave my full-time job and do China Update full-time as my full-time job once I hit 100,000 subscribers. We're almost at 120,000. We hit 100,000 last month. That's why we're doing this Q&A. And so yes, the plan is this year to transition. I can't do it straight away, but I am looking at leaving the full-time job and leaving China and doing this as my full-time job. In which case I will be traveling more. The plan will be to spend a bit more time in New Zealand with my family because I've been in Asia for almost a decade. And I was in China during zero COVID, the 3 years, which was perhaps one of the hardest. There have been difficult periods in my life that were very short, like there's an event, and then it's a few weeks of being very emotionally difficult. But in terms of an extended period of time, the 3 years in which I was in China for zero COVID, where I couldn't leave because if I left, I would be out of the country, was very difficult. But one of the reasons I stayed was because there was almost no coverage of China from within China. And so that 3 years, it was, for me, I found it was so important to continue covering what was happening in China during zero COVID, which included things like the Evergrande, which of course we know eventually collapsed, but that first Evergrande trigger, which began what is now years-long housing crisis, that happened when I was in China during zero COVID. So for me, it was very important that I stay in the country, but it also meant I didn't see my family or my country for 3 years. So that was very difficult time. And so when I do leave China, I want to spend a bit more time back in New Zealand with my family. But I will also be wanting to grow the channel, spend more time on the channel, and maybe actually increase the size of the network and maybe do other content as well. There are other countries I would love to discuss, but definitely do more of China Update and build an international network, maybe speak more around the world, build a network with people around the world, and maybe even launch an interview or a podcast series, maybe on the weekend, for example, have an episode where I talk to a China specialist and we do sort of a longer form interview. That would be something that I want to do, which means that I'll be traveling around the world much more, all throughout Asia, Europe, North America, even parts of Africa. China is involved in much of Africa and around the world. Latin America, I'll be traveling much more and speaking to people. So there will be more of that. It's quite expensive, which is why it's important that I continue to ensure that the channel is financially sustainable so I can do that sort of thing. But yeah, look out this year for the launching of China Update interviews, which will be a special sort of weekend broadcast. Also, one of the reasons I wanted to do this live broadcast is I wanted to see how it went, because I've never done one before, and perhaps in the future I would like to do a weekly roundup of the stories that we covered, maybe on a Sunday like this, where we talk about the major developments from the week, and it's a live broadcast sort of situation in which we interact like this, and that's also something that I'm thinking of doing. Let's continue. Tori Smith, thank you very much. Sorry, Troy, not Tori. Troy, thank you for the support. Tim, thank you. You've been your support has always been tremendously appreciated. Imon, thank you. How is the social life and expat community where you are? Not very robust. If you're in Beijing or Shanghai or basically these two cities in the mainland before COVID, and you wanted to have a rich social life within, say, a foreign community or an expat community, it was fairly good. Let's just have, by the way, another sip of coffee. Cheers, everybody. It was okay. During COVID, it was almost non-existent. The foreign population just was decimated. I think in China, I saw one statistic that 90% of Europeans and over 90% of Americans, which are the two biggest Western communities, the Europeans and the Americans, 90% left during the zero COVID years when the country was locked down. So these communities were decimated. The businesses that supported these communities were decimated. Like popular expat bars, for example, went out of business. Now it's starting to come back, but it's not very robust. There's not much to do. If you wanted to go to Asia to have like a social experience, you want that sort of expat lifestyle where you're going out, you're going to cafes and restaurants and bars and talking to people from around the world, I would recommend somewhere else in Asia. Taipei is wonderful if you want a Chinese-speaking place. Hong Kong is still pretty good. It's expensive though. Tokyo is obviously very popular. There are many places in Japan. Of course, you're not going to get the Mandarin experience, but it's in Asia. Southeast Asia is cheaper. Bangkok, for example, which has a reputation for being seedy, but you can actually avoid that. You can go to Bangkok and stay in the expat areas, like Thong Lo, for example, and be completely. There's no sex tourism. There's no seediness. It's all in a different part of the city, so you can go to Bangkok and completely avoid all of that stuff if you want, because I know some people don't like Thailand for that reason, but you can avoid all that and just live in a nice expat community, and that's pretty robust. So there are other places, but within China itself, it's slim pickings. Going through the comments again, I don't want to miss. Some of these are very, very generous. I think so. Wong, another generous donation from Mr. Wong. Thank you. I think that the difficulty in learning Mandarin contributes cultural misunderstanding between Zhongguo and the Anglosphere. Yes, I think any sort of language barrier does contribute to misunderstanding, or at least it contributes to the difficulty in communication. I think that applies everywhere. Not just, even within the West, if you're trying to follow Germany or Italy or Poland, then of course the language barrier is tricky. There are a lot of journalists who are not trained in Mandarin, although also sometimes I think Beijing will sometimes use that to its advantage. If it does something that's unflattering or perhaps a little bit embarrassing, it will say, it will sort of hide behind the language. And so, yeah, of course, that difficulty already does exist. Fortunately, I speak Chinese. I have an accent, obviously, because I learnt as an adult. My reading is very strong. I did a master's degree at Peking University, which was taught, some courses were taught in English, some courses were taught in Mandarin, but I did entire courses in Mandarin. About 60% of the text that I read every week is in Chinese. And so I've been reading Chinese for almost a decade now. My reading speed in Chinese is almost, if not as fast as my English. In fact, I think my English is getting rusty. Every time I come back to New Zealand, my family teases me because I can't find my English words and I need to think of the Chinese word and translate them over. And having the language certainly does help, both in terms of reading what's going on, but also just talking to regular Chinese. But it's worth saying that trying to get an understanding of a large complex place, like China or the United States or the EU or India, trying to get an understanding of these places, even if it's in your own language, is difficult. Like even if it's all in English. The United States had an election last year, and there was a lot of debate around which candidate was going to win. So even with this sort of what you'd think is a relatively simple question, you've got two candidates, which is going to win, in a system where everyone speaks the same language in the United States, in an English-speaking world, this was a great debate, and this was difficult to understand. So even if there isn't a language barrier, when you're dealing with complex systems, when you're dealing with big states, with big societies, it's difficult to get a handle on what is actually happening. And the same applies with China Update. And I think the best way is to just try to act in good faith and just have people, and this is what I try to do, that are in good faith just trying to understand what's going on, presenting what we think is the most accurate representation of the truth, or what the facts, or whatever, however you want to articulate that. Take that on board, take on as much information as you can and then think about it and just be open to the possibility that parts of it are inaccurate, and then just always go back and review that. And I think for all sort of understanding of any sort of complex system, you just have to be operating in good faith, taking in a lot, thinking, and just not being wedded to certain ideas. And that's what I try to do. And the hope is that we can get to some more perfect understanding of what is actually happening. Thank you for the support and for the question or the comment. Paul, $10 Thank you. You're appreciated. Thank you. You're very much appreciated, Paul. The community here are all very much appreciated. Deeply appreciated from myself. Thank you. Coney Tsang, I'm sorry, it's not opinion, so my apologies if that's the wrong pronunciation. Western News likes to say how much better Chinese EVs are, but being a Mandarin speaker, when I go on Chinese car forums, Teslas are actually pretty popular and rated highly. Which side is true? Well, I don't think that's a binary. I think we've discussed China's dominance in EVs over the last few years on the channel. There's a few reasons. So let me break the question into a couple of parts. Teslas are very popular in China. I see them everywhere. They're very popular in China. People who work in the EV sector, if you talk to Chinese who work in the EV sector, they will admit that Teslas are the gold standard. And they will admit, they go, this is an American technology company and they're the best. But they also will say a lot of other brands, American brands like Ford, European brands like VW, Japanese brands like Toyota, were late to the party when it comes to EVs. Tesla was at the front. And that China, that has many engineers that have trained in Western countries, they have a lot of capital from the government and are in sectors that have been strategically selected and heavily subsidized. This has meant that you're getting a lot of companies that have come out of the woodwork in China that are producing a lot of EVs. A lot of them are not very good. I think we're going to see this year literally dozens of EV companies that are going to collapse or be restructured or taken over by local governments that have shares or have interest in their ownership. So I think a lot of Chinese EV companies are just going to be wiped out this year. But I think there are going to be some big players that are going to do quite well. Players like BYD, for example, and that are going to aggressively go after the international market. They may be hindered by tariffs. The Americans have put on tariffs, the Europeans have put on tariffs. I think the Japanese have also put on tariffs on Chinese EVs, and others have put on tariffs. But they have to go aggressively after these international markets because there's so much overcapacity domestically. But Beijing has identified EV production as a critical strategic industry that must be supported. And so it will continue to be subsidized and supported. And so I think you will see big players that will continue to innovate. And of course, it's easier to innovate if you've got more space because you're being financially supported by the state. You can make more risks because you know you're not going to go bankrupt, for example. But we're going to see, so all of these things can be true. You can see some big players that are going to dominate and going to innovate. That's going to happen. You're going to see Chinese brands that are going to collapse. That's going to happen. And you're going to see Chinese consumers that think Tesla is the best. All these things can be true at the same time. I think that's what we're going to see. Now, I don't know. I could be completely wrong on all this. As we go through the year, we will follow this industry closely. Because it's an important industry generally, but it's also tied into the trade tensions that we're seeing with the Americans, with the Europeans, with the Japanese, with the Indians, etc. So we will continue to follow this very closely. Thank you for the support. Ryan, $50. Thank you so much. Oh, there's two elderly women just walked past and waved at me. What is this strange man doing? Talking to himself. Probably what it looks like. Sorry, Brian. Thank you. Thanks for all you do, Tony. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the incredible support for the channel. $50. It's very generous. Very much appreciated. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Ralph. Oh, I'm so bad with technology. I keep shooting past the comments. Ralph, thank you very much for your support too. Okay, so those are some of the comments. If you're giving financial support, I feel obligated to at least acknowledge, so you'll have to forgive me. But it's also a great way to take questions, and there'll be more questions we'll be covering. I see we've got about maybe 500 people watching at the moment, which is great. People are coming in, people are coming out. If you are new, like I said, this is just a special Q&A, an opportunity for us to talk together. It's very casual, it's very laid back. Yeah, so welcome if you've just come in. Goku, who's been with the channel for Goku, you've been with the channel since, I think, I only had a couple of hundred subscribers, so you've really been with the channel for a long time. Thank you for the support. Now, before we dive into the questions that have been prepared, which I think is over this side, there's something that I wanted to show you all, and this is, for me, this is a very cool feeling when this came in the mail. Let me just have some more coffee. Cheers, if you're having coffee with me. It's great to join you for coffee. So, this came in the mail, and I wanted, so I've left it in the box. I've just opened it because I wanted you all, the community, to be the first that I show this to. And so this is very cool. This is from YouTube. This is the, I'll put it on this side maybe. Hopefully the light, you can sort of see, the light is reflecting on it a little bit. But this is the plaque. In New Zealand, we have funny accents. Some people say plaque, which is something that is on your teeth, but plaque from YouTube, the silver plaque. It says, presented to China, update for passing 100,000 subscribers. So this, for me, is incredible. I'm seeing the comments, unboxing, congratulations, nice, awesome. That's a silver, clapping hands, nice, ta-da. Next it will be gold, congratulations, great job, congratulations, well earned. Been watching since COVID broke out, great, congratulations, clapping, congratulations, good stuff, congratulations. A lot of congratulations. Thank you so much, everybody, for the incredible, like, this makes me, like, when I got this, so this is 100,000 subscribers, which was also, like, for me, this was a milestone where I felt like when you get to 100,000, you can actually call yourself a YouTuber. To have done this for 5 years, oh, welcome, new subscriber, welcome, Tom. To have done this for 5 years, over 1,200 videos, you know, making videos every day, six days a week. Recently, when I was in Australia, I took the weekend off, Saturday and Sunday. That was only the second time in 3 years that I'd taken the entire weekend off. So having done this for years, and the first 2 years, it took 2 years to get 1,000 subscribers. 2 years, 1,000 subscribers. But I enjoyed the community, even when it was small. It was a wonderful community, and I enjoyed the work, and I enjoyed being able to try and help in a very, very modest way the world try and understand China a bit better. That it's always been like a pleasure. It never felt like a chore. It was always, for me, I felt very privileged and honored to be able to produce videos that people would take the time to watch. But still, in saying that, this is pretty cool. Even though it was always an honor and a privilege, something like this, it is a wonderful milestone. It is a nice recognition, and it really is, for me, it's not so much about the channel or myself getting to 100,000 subscribers. It's about a community. It's about you, you all who followed. I mean, some people watch every day, some people watch on occasion. It's really, this is really for you all and for us as a community. For me, this channel has hit 100,000 subscribers. For me, it's this community is now 100,000 strong. And actually, as of filming, it's almost 120,000 strong. So this is for all of us. And it's it's an amazing feeling, and I'm glad, like I said, that I can do this live stream for those who wanted to see behind the scenes and sort of discuss some of these questions. I got this about 2 weeks ago, but it stayed in the box until today, so that you would be the first I show it to, because this is for all of us. I don't know if I'll ever get to gold. I think that's 1 million subscribers. This channel is very niche. I don't know if we'll get that big, but it's already an amazing milestone. It's a fantastic community. I look forward this year to traveling around the world and meeting some of you around the world in your own homes. So then it's not just a one-way conversation. It's great that we can comment here. Thank you, well done. Thank you, a lot of congratulations. Yeah, so, welcome Judith, new subscriber. Thank you for joining the community. It's great to have you. But yeah, this is for all of us. This is for you all. And I'm glad I could share this with you. It's a little bit shiny. That New Zealand light is coming through. But yeah, it's a tremendous honor to be able to show this to you. Thank you for the incredible ongoing support and for being part of this community. So I'll put that down. I'll go through some of the comments as well, which is wonderful. Mark Mayer, thank you very much. $25 US, very generous. Came late but already enjoying the chat. Welcome if you've just joined. Yes, like I said, this is just a casual conversation on a Sunday afternoon, and an opportunity for me to speak to you live for the first time. So it's great to have you on board. Thank you for joining. $5 from Mick Dermid. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. In Scott, I can't see, I think Steve, I'm sorry, it cuts off the name there. In Scott, thank you for the generous donation. $20 US is very generous. How has Chinese business and or government reacted to US moves in Central America, reshipping and port development? Too early to tell. Yeah, so we talked about that earlier this week. So feel free, by the way, to ask either questions about the channel or general China questions. Of course, my answers are not, I haven't prepared responses to China-specific questions like I normally do with the channel. We talked about Panama earlier this week, for example, pulling out of the Belt and Road Initiative. The US, I think Rubio met with the leader of Panama and I think El Salvador. We talked about that earlier this week. It is too early to say. Obviously, China is increasing its influence all around the world. This region is much more geopolitically, from a geopolitical and from a security perspective, this region is much more important to the Americans. So I think Beijing, though they will be disappointed, they will not be surprised. This is obviously America's backyard, and I think they expect that the US is going to be quite assertive in this region. So I like I said, I think they will be disappointed or concerned. Beijing will be concerned, disappointed, but not surprised. And they shouldn't be surprised because, yeah, this is the US's immediate neighborhood, and the Chinese they're going to prioritize their own neighborhood just like the Americans. But we will be following all these sort of developments very closely, obviously, as we go throughout the year. The big developments are in China's neighborhood: South China Sea, East China Sea, Taiwan Strait tensions with India, etc. David, wow, David, this is very, very generous. $100 US. Thank you, sir. That's a very, very generous support. As I've said before, throughout the life of the channel, it's been very important for me that because we're talking about, this is essentially in the media industry, really what we're talking about is the news and analysis. I wouldn't consider myself a journalist. In fact, I'm more like an analyst that is sharing my analysis with a community here, and that community is operating on a platform which is YouTube. Welcome, new subscriber, welcome. But for me, it's important. It was always important, one, that I was fully transparent with where the funding comes from for the channel. And it was also very important for me, if possible, and I'm very fortunate that it has been possible, that the channel is primarily subscriber supported. This is why sponsored features, which can be quite lucrative, are restricted to just a couple a month. I get offers for sponsorships like almost every day. I could put sponsored features in every video. I don't, for two main reasons. One, it would be so disruptive. I wouldn't want to be having even 60-second sponsored features in every video. It'd be so disruptive for your viewing experience. I would hate it. I'd hate to be watching a channel and it's a sponsored feature in every video, even though there are some channels that do that. I didn't want it to be that disruptive. But two, I did not want to be in a situation like a lot of legacy media where they rely on corporate sponsorship, where they think, well, let's not talk about this because it's not very corporate sponsor friendly and we risk alienating our sponsors. I wanted the financial support to the channel to primarily come from the community that watches it, so that my incentive is always to produce the highest quality analysis for you, and that if I didn't do that, then I wouldn't get that support, and if I did, then I would. And so for me, I'm not worried about what corporate sponsors will think. I'm concerned about what the community will think. Now, you could argue that this could lead to, I think, what some in the industry call audience capture, but I think you can avoid that, and I think that a mature audience, which is what we have here, and I'm very much appreciate this. It is a mature audience here. I think that a mature audience wants good faith coverage, even if they disagree with some of that coverage. And for those who don't appreciate that, will just simply not be part of the community. They just won't follow. And so far I've been very fortunate that the support, the financial support, has primarily come from subscribers. And that's wonderful. And that's going to remain the case. I don't see a situation where sponsored features, for example, are more than ever, say maybe 5 a month max. At the moment, it's about 2, and I'm very happy with that level. So David, thank you very much for your very generous support. $100 is very generous. Congrats. I watch almost every day. You've earned everything you've achieved. Thank you, sir. That's like I said, the pleasure is all mine to create these every day. It is a lot of work, but if you do what you love and you've got a great community supporting you, then it's always a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to doing more this year when I move into doing YouTube as a full-time sort of commitment. Okay. Tony, we've got a comment here from, I'm too slow. I'm so far behind on the comments. I'm sorry. Am I talking too much? You'll have to tell me if I'm talking too much with these answers. If McDermott, another $10. Thank you, Tony. What is the possibility China is using its economic collapse as a means to reallocate industrial capacity towards its military production? I don't think China wants its economy to collapse, so I don't think it's using that. I think you mean from an opportunistic perspective. Well, so that's a big question. Let me. With some of these questions, I'm worried I'm going to talk for 20 minutes. So let me just make a couple of points. China's system is one whereby the state can select industries which it wants to support. And so we saw that with property and infrastructure, and now we're seeing that with manufacturing, and particularly export-oriented manufacturing. Part of that also means that things like those areas that have military applications are also being supported with state funding. And I think because you have a much more hawkish administration, maybe administration is the wrong word, the team around Xi, the leader, the ultimate decision maker, is more hawkish and more focused on national security priorities. I think you are definitely seeing more injection of that state-backed capital into industries that have military application or are just straight up military. I think you're definitely seeing that for sure. More so than you would see if, say, you had a more civilian economy focused senior decision-making group. But again, it's more they have this hose of capital, they have this hose of funding, and then they choose which plants to water. And because one, they feel like they're in this especially tense period in history, geopolitically, which is true. China is in competition with the US-led West and its allies, and it is a very tense time. But also because other industries have so much overcapacity, like they can't pump it into infrastructure like they used to. They can't pump it into property, obviously. And so they need to find somewhere to pump it into. The alternative, of course, is to transform their system, a structural transformation where households enjoy a much larger share of the economic production within the economy, and thus you have greater demand and you have greater consumer-driven growth like you have in more mature systems like the United States, which has a very robust consumer market. That's the main story we've been following for years now. That is an alternative. This is something that Pettis, for example, has been saying for years. Back when he was a contrarian, now he's a mainstream. He sort of has a mainstream view on this. That's an alternative. But as we've seen, they have not made that transformation. And part of it, I think, is one, it's very difficult. And two, there's a lot of power that has to be given up. It may be more powerful when you have a robust, dynamic consumer market. That may be more powerful, like in general. But if that means that local governments, for example, have to give up some of their economic influence or their power, and you have vested interests, then this is structurally very difficult to achieve. So that's all I'll say on that. That's like a 1 hour conversation. So I'll just make those points. But that's one of the stories, again, we'll be following this year. McKay Nielsen, thank you for the support. What are your thoughts on the theory that global trade is declining due to the US becoming more insular and the impact this could have on China's economy? What are your thoughts on the theory that global trade is declining due to the US becoming more insular? Sorry, just one moment. Cool, that's next week. Sorry, I just had to check a message. So I'm not a US expert. I don't have US expertise or experience, so it's difficult for me to comment on a US sort of centric question. What is the thought on the global trade is declining due to the US becoming more insular, the impact on the Chinese economy? From the Chinese perspective, so I would actually have to look at the trade data and see, is it actually declining? My understanding is that you're seeing some manufacturing returning to the United States or returning to North America, or you're seeing the diversification of supply chains. So instead of something being assembled in China, it is now being assembled in Vietnam, and it's being in part assembled in China, and then either Chinese or non-Chinese factories in Vietnam or Bangladesh or India are then further assembling them, which means they could sidestep US tariffs or trade restrictions, and then they flow to the US that way. I would actually have to look at, I don't want to give an answer off the fly, so I'd actually have to look into the data itself and the analysis, but that's probably worth looking into in a video. Spencer, congratulations and thank you for all the hard work you have put in. I consider you to be one of the few trustworthy sources of information on China. Thank you. That's a tremendous compliment to receive. For me, like I said, I've always just wanted to make China more accessible and to have more informed conversations about China. That's always sort of been my goal. Some people will message me and say, what is your agenda? My agenda is I genuinely believe that it's important that we have more informed conversations about China, because I just don't think they were happening. Whether you're pro-China or anti-China, wherever you are on that spectrum, it's so important that they're informed. And so for me, it was always very easy to be honest, because that was my agenda. That was what I wanted to happen. Now you could say that I have a bias and that I'm blinded, so perhaps I'm biased in some unintended way, but my intent has always been, it was never I wanted people to have this particular view of China or this particular view of China. It was more just to try and help people have more informed conversations about China, and for me to also understand the country, because it's a very complex country, and to share that with you all. So thank you. Alexander, 15 Australian dollars. Thank you, sir. Or ma'am, actually, sir, I think. And the emoji is I think a hippo in a chair celebrating. So that's quite a nice image. For those who are drinking coffee, it's good to join you. Guild of Arcane, I think that is. I miss Nanjing. Which VPN do you use? I use 3. What are they called? What's it called? Astral. I use Astral. I use Express, and I use another one which name has left me. Nanjing or Nanjing, if we're speaking just English, is the provincial capital of Jiangsu, which sort of hugs the Yangtze River Delta around Shanghai, and it is a nice city. Actually, if you're ever in Shanghai, and you want to make a day trip, you're there for a while. There's actually a lot to do in Shanghai, but if you want to make some day trips, just get on the high-speed rail and visit. There are a few nice cities in that region. Hangzhou, the provincial capital of Zhejiang, is a great city. It has several World UNESCO heritage sites, including West Lake, Xihu, which is very beautiful, but actually, if you go to West Lake, it's quite crowded, but around it, there's beautiful temples and stuff. Another one is Suzhou, which is in Jiangsu province. It's also a very beautiful town. It has a lot of rivers and lakes and stuff like that. And Nanjing is also a great city to visit. It has a beautiful history. It also has very sad history. Obviously, that's where the Nanjing massacre was during World War II, the Japanese invasion. And that was because at that time, Nanjing, which literally means southern capital, Beijing means northern capital, Nanjing means southern capital. So this was a capital during several different dynasties, including the Ming, and it was the capital for a time of the nationalists before and during World War II. And so there's actually a lot of beautiful traditional architecture in Nanjing, as well as more modern, sort of early 20th century European-inspired architecture. You have like the Sun Yat-sen Memorial. You have the Nanjing Massacre Museum. These are all wonderful places to visit. I will say I'm not a big fan of the food in Nanjing. I don't actually like a lot of the food in the Yangtze River Delta region. I prefer the southwestern spicy food. Xiang Cai, which is Xiang Cai is named after the Xiang River, which goes through Changsha, the provincial capital of Hunan. That food is probably my favorite Chinese food in the country. Excellent food. If you ever have an opportunity, if you like spicy, most people when they think spicy Chinese food, they think Sichuan Chuan Cai, which is delicious. I like that as well. Hot pot is amazing. I love Sichuanese food, but Xiang Cai or Hunanese food is my favorite food. I also love the food in the north. I lived in Beijing, the capital, for almost half a decade, and so I ate a lot of northern food. But yes, Nanjing, if you like that sort of food, for me it's too dan, as they say in Chinese, tai dan la. It's too sort of how would you say, like too light. It's too light. But yes, Nanjing is lovely city to visit. If you have the opportunity, you could probably see everything that you want to see in 1 or 2 days though. So I don't know if I'd spend a week there. Patricia, thank you very much for the support, Patricia. And we have another, going through the comments. Toilet Finger, hey Tony, congratulations on your success. Thank you, JD. Please, PZ is a journalist and based in the US, but still a solid source in my opinion. I think there's a conversation happening in the comments, so I jumped in there in the middle. Another great support from Mario. Thank you, Mario, for your support. My wife and I listen to you every day, and because of that, feel more in touch with the world, and we thank you for that. Again, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Mario, and to your wife. I hope I can continue producing content that you get some get that value from. The pleasure is all mine. Now it's become. I'm just going to put the curtain down a little bit. Just one moment. I'll put the curtain down because the light is starting to move onto my face there a little bit, blinding me. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. Okay, that's a little bit better. Yes, I was going blind there for a little bit from the light. It's a lovely day here in New Zealand, but yeah, not when it's on your face. Now, we're about an hour and 20 minutes into the live stream. I didn't think this would go for more than an hour, and we haven't even started the questions yet. I had a Q&A prepared here. Now, this is like a one-off for 100,000. So if I did other live streams in the future, it would not be sort of this long and meandering and all about me. But because it is a special Q&A, this one's going longer. So people are coming and going as we go through. Lashik, who's been with the channel for a long time, says this should be weekly. I would love to do potentially. This would have to be when I leave China because the internet in China is not good enough for a live stream. But I would like to do a week in review potentially. So on a Sunday, we'd look at the what we covered from the previous week, so that we've reviewed the week and then we can move into the new week. And this would be good for people who have maybe missed a few episodes. And that would be a live stream as well, and that would also be an opportunity to ask questions. So this is also something that I'm thinking about doing as well. But this is just a basic Q&A. So now, with that said, I probably don't want to go for more than 2 hours, so I should probably jump into the Q&A. So there are some questions, and by the way, if you support, feel free to ask questions throughout. I'm happy to continue to respond to the comments as we go through. But I will begin. I think you should see in the bottom corner there should be a PowerPoint that was put together. This was made from questions that were submitted in advance. I haven't seen the questions yet, so we'll go through some of these and we can discuss, but feel free to ask other questions as we go through. So this is here. So MC Parsons asks, it would be nice to hear some of your story. What took you to China? How long have you lived there? What changes have you seen, especially cultural? Thank you for the question. Before that, Lo B has said, please keep up the insightful thoughts with all things concerning China. Thanks. I will. Thank you for the support. Very much appreciated. Thank you very much. It would be nice to hear some of your story. What took you to China? So this sort of stuff, I always sort of feel awkward because I feel like no one really cares about me. It's about the channel. But since this is a Q&A about me and the channel, I will indulge myself. Hopefully, I do not talk for too long. So I'm from New Zealand. I grew up in New Zealand, provincial working class. I was very fortunate that I had the right people in my life when I was a teenager that made me want something a little bit more, that I should go to university. So I went to law school in Wellington, Victoria University of Wellington, where I did my law degree. That was my first exposure to finance as well, because it was a finance-focused legal sort of training that I went under. I graduated. I worked in public policy, so I had exposure to policy, which I found very interesting. And then I moved into private practice as a lawyer, which I enjoyed very much. Welcome to the new subscriber. So my background was law and policy, and I'd been working at a firm in Auckland. I was being trained for corporate litigation, and for some reason I was very curious about China. So I grew up in a small town in New Zealand, provincial town, and when you go to Wellington and then Auckland, they're much more cosmopolitan cities, and so you had a large Asian population, for example. And so I started thinking more about our place in the world being, essentially, though we're a Western country, we're sort of in or near Asia. You might say Asia Pacific. And so I began curious about Asia, and it became very clear to me that traditionally, New Zealand, our security patrons and our largest markets have been the same, and they've been from our same civilizational tradition. So our security patron was the British Empire. We were settled by the British. Fortunately, we have one of the best systems in the world because we come from an Anglophone tradition, where you have parliamentary representation and the English language and capitalism and all that wonderful stuff. So we sold to the British market, the British Empire, and then in the 20th century that switched to an American world order, which is also the same civilizational background, Anglo-American civilization, English-speaking. That tradition is sort of a shared tradition. Now, we have different cultures between these countries, but we have a sort of a similar shared tradition. And we're also selling to the Australians, so we speak the same language, we have a similar civilizational heritage. But for the first time, we now have major Asian markets, like Japan first, for example, and then now China. And our security patron is the United States and the United States-led world order, but our largest market is China. And I thought that this was a very interesting development. And I thought that we weren't really ready for it because we didn't really have many New Zealanders that were studying China and going to China to train. And I remember thinking at that time, I was like, I don't think I could name more than a few cities in China, let alone have some sort of comprehensive understanding of the system and how it operates. And so for me, there was both an intellectual curiosity as well as this idea that there was a need that had to be met for the sake of our country and our country's future, but also that there was a market opportunity. There was a gap in the market. And so I made the decision that I would go to China, I would do a master's degree in China, and I'd try to learn a little bit about the country. I was still quite a young man at that time. I was about 25. I started law school at 17. I started very early at law school. And so I'd already worked for a couple of years. I was about 25. And I decided I'd go and do a 2-year degree. And if there were opportunities there in the market, for example, to do that sort of work, then I would stay for a little bit longer. And if there wasn't, then it was like, okay, well, it's 2 years that I'm behind, but I'll still be in my late 20s and I can go back into a law firm or into private practice somewhere else. And so I made that decision then. Went to Beijing. I went to Peking University, where I did a master's degree in Chinese foreign policy. The courses some were taught in English, some courses were taught in Chinese. I spoke no Chinese at this point. So I was I was either 25 or 26. I spoke no Chinese. I knew that I would be doing courses in Chinese. And so I had a year from when I applied to when I would start the course in Beijing. And I was working full time at that time. And so I'd work during the day, and then in the evening, I would spend a couple of hours trying to learn Chinese by myself. I've actually never really formally learned the language, like through classes. My language was basically self-taught, and then getting to China and trying to speak in these sort of environments. And that's how I reached fluency in Chinese. And it was very difficult. So I spent a year trying to learn to read and write. I got to HSK level 5. This was back in the old system where 6 was the highest. So I got to HSK level 5. I started the course. Very difficult. It was taught in Chinese. The readings were in Chinese. It was very difficult. It was incredibly stressful. I couldn't speak very well. But this sort of baptism by fire allowed me to develop the skills to read Chinese documents very quickly. I'd already had to read a lot of documents at law school that taught me that you sometimes having to read hundreds of pages a night. So I could do that in English. And then this stress, this pressure, which fortunately didn't break me, but almost did a few times, allowed me, that pressure got me to a point where I was reading Chinese pretty quickly. In terms of speaking, I thought I could speak. I'd been studying for a year, self-taught, and then I went to China, and I thought I'd be able to speak, and it turns out I couldn't. was in a taxi and I tried to speak and I couldn't say anything and I could not understand what they were saying. And I realized, I thought I could speak Mandarin, but I can't speak at all unless they say the thing that is in my textbook in perfect Mandarin. I couldn't understand what they were saying. And so what I did was, when I arrived, it's very tempting for expats, for foreigners when they go to China, to live with other expats, because you feel you're away from home. It's a stressful environment using the language, but I knew that if I did that, I would not be able to learn the language. So what I did was I moved in with young professionals, Chinese young professionals who did not speak English. So back then, China had Airbnb. It later was banned in the country, and I think it still is banned in the country. So I used Airbnb to move in for several months in an apartment that had two other young women, actually, in their own rooms, and they didn't speak English. And I made myself only hang around with other English speakers once a week, which was typically a Friday night. So on a Friday night, I would go out, I'd use English. For all the other days, I had to interact in Mandarin. And the first 3 months was horrible because I couldn't communicate at all. But then that sort of pressure got me to a point where I could actually begin to speak. And then by about 6 months in, my speaking was pretty strong. And so that really helped with the language. People ask how I learned. It was really just putting myself under that pressure. It was a year to learn a lot of the characters and some of the grammar. Then just being there, doing courses, having to read really helped with my reading. And forcing myself to speak helps with the speaking. And now I speak, fluent. I have an accent, obviously, because I'm a foreigner. I started learning as an adult. But I feel very comfortable speaking Mandarin. A lot of my work day-to-day in China, because I have a full-time job still, that is all in Mandarin. My job is completely done in Mandarin. And so that helped. Now, so how long have I lived there? I've lived there, I think 9 years now, almost 10 years. I think about 9 years. And about 4.5 years was in Beijing, the capital. And then the other half is near Shanghai. So I've been near the two major cities this entire time. I've also traveled. When I was studying, there were a lot of breaks, and so I traveled. I've traveled to about 30 different cities across China, many in the north, but also probably about 2/3 in the north, a third in the south. I've seen every major city in the mainland. The only places I haven't been to, for obvious reasons, is Tibet and Xinjiang, because it's a little risky to go there. And even if I went there, you're very restricted in what you can see and do. But it's a little bit too risky for me to go there. And so I haven't been to those regions, unfortunately. I wish I could. I wish I could go and see them, like actually go and look where I want to look, but it's not possible, unfortunately. But I've been to almost all the rest of the country, every region of the country. Now let me quickly go through some of the comments that have come through. Santa, $50 is very generous. Thank you very much. And the emoji is interesting. It seems to be some sort of happy Godzilla jumping around some buildings. Hopefully those buildings have insurance. Thank you very much for the wonderful support. Nerdo, Nerdo, the thoughtfulness you put in your channel is much appreciated. Well, the support, like I said, the support from the community is much appreciated, and it's your support that allows me to keep going and is a tremendous source of motivation. So thank you very much. CCCC. Thank you very much for the support. What's mainlanders' view on PRC and ROC relations regarding with the USA over Taiwan and the growing chip wars? Oh, it's a big topic. It's a really big topic. Obviously there's a diversity of views within China, but it's still within a particular zeitgeist or a particular scope, and the scope is very nationalistic. So yeah, there's very, very few. The vast majority of Chinese, and I've spoken to many, the vast majority of Chinese want to see Taiwan brought into the fold, that is brought under Beijing's control. I think a lot don't want a war. They don't want a war. They want it to be quote unquote peaceful. I think some don't mind a war, and I think some would like a war. I think some are quite nationalistic, and they think that China is very strong, and that they want to show strength, and they see, for example, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and they look at that and they go, yep, that's what we want here, and we would do that much better because we're a stronger country. So you have a diversity of views, but the majority are still very much within that nationalistic framing when it comes to Taiwan, which is very disquieting, as you can imagine. Very, very disquieting. Thank you for the support. So feel free to keep asking questions as we go through. What changes have you seen, especially cultural? Sadly, when I first got to China, which would have been about 9 years ago, it was still at the tail end of a period where China was a bit more open, a bit more, the mainstream thinking was a bit more cosmopolitan. The intellectual environment was more dynamic. Since then, under Xi Jinping, the country's become more closed. It's become a little bit more nationalistic. I mean, there's always been nationalism, but it's more nationalistic, I think. Sadly, it's more xenophobic. It's more confident in good and bad ways. It's good for a society to be confident in the places that it has confidence. And maybe in the West, we need to be a bit more confident and maybe a bit more proud of our heritage, for example. I don't want to delve into Western politics, but I think some would argue that in recent years, the West has forgotten to be proud of what is worthy of being proud about, while also criticizing what's worthy of being criticized. So it is good to be proud and to be confident, but when that devolves into triumphalism and you become blind to your own problems to the point where you make strategic errors, for example, I think you could argue that China is more like that and has become more like that in the last 5 years or so. That has been a change that I've seen. It is definitely a more truculent, a more assertive, more nationalistic, more inward-facing country. There are exceptions. It's a big country with a lot of people, so you'll always find exceptions. But I think if I had to describe the mainstream thinking, then I think that is probably what we're seeing and what has been the case for the last 5 years. And unfortunately, this reinforces itself. If you become more inward-facing and assertive, then there's a reaction to that internationally. And then that reaction reinforces that assertiveness, because you have a sense that you're under siege. If you're assertive and then if you want to change the status quo, and then your neighbors or other powers around the world respond to that, then the hawks that you have in policymaking circles and hawks that you have in media, for example, will take that as evidence that assertiveness was correct because you feel like you're under threat or under siege. And so that just reinforces that. And I think that's what we're seeing. So even, and this is why I'm pessimistic, because I do think that this is the mindset now, and this is how the behavior is going to be. This is going to influence the behavior that we're going to see, and there'll be a global reaction to that, and that will just feed into it. You have a assertive relationship with Japan. Japan pushes back against something, and then you say, look, Japan is a puppet of the United States, and it's done this because the world is trying to keep us down. That will sort of be the narrative, as opposed to, well, we're acting provocatively, and maybe the Japanese are acting provocatively as well, and this is how states act. There's this blindness with nationalists especially, where where they will see China as operating like a sensible international actor, and everyone else is just a puppet of the US, which is, for me, it seems like almost a comical caricature, and it is sad when ideology. And I'm not saying everyone thinks this way. I'm just saying you get this from some nationalists and some nationalist intellectuals, and it's sort of unfortunate that they can see themselves as a rational actor, but they don't see the rest of the world as a rational actor. But yeah, so this change is unfortunate. So that's in the thinking. I will also say, though, in the last 10 years, the Tier 1 cities have definitely become more developed. The Tier 1 cities have become more developed places. The infrastructure is in the Tier 1 cities is world class. Of course, you go to poorer regions, they have great infrastructure, but they have tremendous debt, and the infrastructure in some poor regions has crippled the local government's ability to function from a fiscal perspective. But in the Tier 1 cities, the major cities, I've just seen a lot of development. Now, I think that's now slowing, but I also saw that development. When I first got to Beijing, for example, it was very difficult to get good coffee. Now, even though the milk is not very good, they do import good beans, and they have baristas that know what they're doing, and you have nice cafes. So little things like this. This is sort of like, and you could say that's a very bourgeois sort of perspective, like the great changes, you've got good cafes, but that's just an example. You have more international food. It's not as rich as Hong Kong or Singapore or Bangkok, but in Beijing or Shanghai, the Tier 1 cities, you can actually get half-decent international food. When I first arrived there, there were entire cuisines you couldn't eat. When I first arrived in Beijing, it was almost impossible to get, say, good Turkish food. Now it's everywhere, for example. So that's nice, I guess. Okay, I'll go through a few more of the comments. Yeah, I've had a few that have popped through. I don't want to miss, especially for those who are being very generous with the. For those who are financially supporting the channel, I really want to make sure I don't miss any of those for obvious reasons. One Armed Bandit, 20 euros, thank you, sir, or ma'am. Hi from Ireland. Would love to know your take on the links between the Irish and Chinese economies. That's a great question. I don't really know. I haven't looked into specifically the Irish-Chinese economic connection, actually. I'm ashamed to say. Perhaps that's something I will have to change. Last year I went to a conference in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and I actually did a big episode on Malaysia-Chinese relations, especially the economic and security relations, because I realized I didn't really know anything. And so when I go to a place, I use that as an excuse to actually do research so we can talk about the specifics of that relationship. So I think I'll have to do a trip to Ireland and have an episode where we discuss the specifics of that relationship. We'll always touch on the big relationships: US, China, Japan, China, India, China, Australia, China, Europe, China, for example, UK, China. I very rarely talk about New Zealand, China, because we're not particularly important, which is sometimes a good thing when you're not that important and you're out of the way. But Ireland is an important country, and I think in the future, especially if I travel there, I would love to do the research and discuss that particular relationship on China Update. That would be lovely. Paul, thank you, sir, for your support. I've been a fan for a long time, and it's great to see your channel growing. Thank you very much. Thank you for sticking with the channel, and thank you for joining us for this live stream, which I'm actually having a lot of fun. I did not expect it to go this long, actually. I'm surprised you're still sticking with me. And we've got other comments as well in the chat. Oh, wow, Ben, that's very generous. $50 US is very generous. Thank you, sir. Hello from Kansas City. Thank you for all that you do. You're the best. Ben, it is a pleasure and a privilege to do these videos every day. And there will be one up. So if you're watching in North America, it should be your afternoon/early evening. This is morning on Monday in New Zealand. So there will be a regular Monday China update that will go up. So when you wake up tomorrow, if you're in North America, for example, or in Europe, when you wake up tomorrow on Monday, there will be a regular episode. And there's actually there's a couple of important things we need to cover. So I'm looking forward to making that. I'll be writing it after this. So yeah, but Ben, thank you for the incredible support. Ozboy, great name. Congratulations on 100,000. Thank you. The subscribers jumped in January. January was actually an amazing month. I don't know what happened, but the channel got about 5 million views in January and about 30,000 new subscribers. Now that has slowed back down again, but the new normal is higher than it was in December. But that was, I don't know what happened with the algorithm. It was probably in part the thumbnails and the titles, which I've discussed before with you guys. For the longest time, I just wanted plain thumbnails. I didn't like using provocative thumbnails, even though many were telling me that I should. I experimented with using the more provocative thumbnails, and there was a huge, I think it was 900% increase in impressions, especially, and this is critical, impressions to new viewers, which is very, very important. Those new viewers, that is critically important for the growth of the channel. And using the more provocative thumbnails and title combinations really helped with that. And so, and I think we had a conversation about this, right? I spoke to you all a few times in December, saying that it was sort of hard to ignore that jump in viewership and that what it did for the algorithm. So, yeah, the decision was sort of made to continue using them, even though I know, for me, if there was one thing, the one thing about the channel that I create some discomfort is that I have to use these more provocative thumbnails and titles. But I think that regular viewers, like you all, understand that when you get into the videos themselves, you're going to have a type of presentation, and that presentation, I try to ensure, and I hope you agree, is grounded and sober, and that even though the titles may be somewhat provocative, you can sort of just leave that to the side and just watch the video, and the video is really the articulation that we need to follow when it comes to understanding China, and that the thumbnails are really just for the algorithm so that the channel is shown to new people and can grow, and that people can come and be part of this community. I really hope that's the case. I do, if it is annoying, I am sorry. I do try to at least have it linked to the video. There have been I'm a one-man band. Everything I do on China Update, I do myself. The research, the writing, which takes up the majority of the work, the presentation, the editing. The only thing I now do, the only part that I don't do myself now are the thumbnails. So I have a third party that does the thumbnails, and they do the titles as well. And there are some that I just refuse to use because I just think they're too sensationalist. I just won't use them. So I do have a line. Maybe for other people, the line's not close enough, but I always try to get that balance right. And I do read all the comments, by the way. So I try every day, and now the comments are getting near 1,000 a day, but I still try to read all the comments, or at least most of the comments. I try to reply to some comments. I miss comments because actually the system that YouTube uses for the creators to go through the comments is actually suboptimal. I actually miss a lot of comments, but I do try my best to read through all of them. And so I am always taking your feedback on board, whether it's about the thumbnails and the titles, but also about the content, about what we discuss. And that's always been important for me because, like I said, from day one, what I've wanted to do is try to make China more accessible for people. And so for me, it's important to hear what you think about. Mike, welcome to the community. It's great to have you on board. What I try to do is hear your feedback, and if there is something that I feel like if there's something I'm doing that's making the content less accessible, or something that can be improved, I try to incorporate that. So thank you very much for that feedback as well. Yes. Now there was Frank. Frank, a very generous $50 is incredibly generous. Thank you, sir. Like I said before, The channel relies primarily on subscriber support, so this is tremendously generous and deeply appreciated. And Joe R, $10, thank you. Thanks for all your work, Tony. I understand China so much better thanks to you. That is honestly the greatest compliment. If somebody says like things like they like to listen to my channel in the morning when they drink coffee, that for me that means a lot, because that's sort of such an important time of the day. But especially when someone says that they have a better understanding of China because of the channel, that is the reason why I started the channel. And so it's the greatest compliment I could hope to receive. And I will continue it, even if there's just 10 people. If it gets to a point where there are only 10 people watching, but if there are 10 people that are getting value and understanding China better, then I will continue making these videos. And indeed, the first 2 years, like I said before, the first 2 years, I was literally only getting, it took 2 years to get 1,000 subscribers. So the first year I was getting 10, 20 views, and I was making these videos every day on top of a full-time job. And I still do it on top of a full-time job. I'm currently on holiday, but I'll be going back to the job shortly. So this is 4 to 5 hours a day work for 2 years for a few dozen people watching. But for me, it was these few dozen people, if they're getting this value, if they're better understanding China because of these videos, then for me it's worth the work. So yeah, Joe, thank you. It's if you got even a modestly improved understanding of China because of the videos, then I consider myself tremendously fortunate, or it's a tremendous pleasure from my perspective. Now we'll jump to the next question. Ben Capelacci, forgive my pronunciation. I think that's a chi at the end. I don't speak much Italian, so, and I assume that's an Italian surname. Ben's question is, I think it would be great to hear more about your process. Do you keep up to date with activity in China, and how do you select what kinds of stories to highlight? We've got a new subscriber, by the way. That is a, what is that? That is a John. Is that John? No, that is Pat. Pat, welcome to the channel. So Ben's question, my process. Okay, so actually, when I go to subscriber meetups, this is like in person. Like I was recently in Sydney, but I've been to subscriber meetups all throughout Asia. This is probably the most common question I get, is the process. Like, how do I actually put these videos together? So perhaps it is worth discussing this here. Actually, I should, no, this is the second most common thing I'm told. The most common thing I get at subscriber meetups is people say they're very surprised by how tall I am, which I always think is funny, because in China update videos, you only literally see my head, maybe my shoulders and my chest, but you have no clue how tall I am, how tall or short I am. But strange enough, every subscriber meetup, or if I meet a viewer in public, I've been recognized in public a few times, the most common thing I get told is that I'm much taller than they thought. So let me just tell you all now, so you're not surprised. I'm 6'4", so I think that's about 190 centimeters approximately. I am quite tall. Yes, I am quite tall. So if we meet in person, I hope you're not surprised by that. Another thing, actually, I also get, this is a little tangent. Another thing I also get asked a lot about, and I get emails literally still to this day. I had to talk about this in a video because it became such a strange comment to get, but I get this dozens of times a week. People ask if I dye my hair or whether I have a wig, which I thought, of all the stuff we discuss on the channel, I've always thought that's a strange thing to be concerned about. So let me just once again say for the record, no, I don't wear a wig. This is my hair. And I don't dye my hair either. Like, this is my natural hair color. I think it's perhaps because my facial hair is is got a few grey whiskers through it, so it looks a little bit lighter. And in natural light, it sort of goes a strawberry blonde sort of colour, and it's different to my hair colour. So it looks like I'm dyeing my hair, but I'm not. And people ask me, "What's your secret?" The secret is I'm under 40. That's my secret to not having grey hair. So that's why. That's why my hair is this colour. So hopefully that puts that to bed. I'm sure I'll still get emails and comments about my hair colour, but it is what it is. Evan has subscribed. Welcome, Evan, to the community. It's wonderful to have you on board. We've got a few comments as well and super likes, so I just want to acknowledge these supporters especially. I'm also reading through the comments as well. There's so many coming through. First of all, thank you for all the comments. Keep talking. It's great to see the discussion, and I am trying to read them as we talk. Michael says, with his donation as well, thank you for the support, Michael. Tony, you have nothing to apologize for. We all have to work within the context we are in. As long as the reports you deliver are as good as they are, no one should care for the thumbnails. Thank you, Michael. I deeply appreciate that. And like I said, the videos themselves will not change. Like the whole reason that I started the channel was to help have more informed conversations about China. So the day that I change the videos to go against that initial intent, it just means I'm not doing what I set out to do anymore, and what drives me. And so yeah, the videos will always remain grounded and sober, and I will still try not to go too far with the thumbnails, and I think regular viewers know that, and they should sort of see the thumbnails and titles as really just a necessary evil for YouTube's algorithm, and to help the channel be shown to new people, because I think that actually the more provocative ones do get new viewers to click. They're curious and they'll click on it, and we've seen that in the analytics behind the scenes. It does seem that new viewers will go, oh, that's interesting, and they'll watch, and once they do watch, the retention rate is quite high. It's about 30% of new viewers will watch more videos in the future. So thank you, Michael, much appreciated. Courtney, what's Courtney? Can I see your last name? Courtney has just given $20 and a woo emoji. Thank you. A great woo back to yourself. Thank you for the amazing support. There's an elderly gentleman who's walking past the house and is just looking in, thinking, what is this young man doing, talking to himself on the computer? I'm sure I look quite comical for those pedestrians that are walking by. Wong has sent another statement. I'm hesitant to read it because, but I will read it since there's the donation. Thank you again. Whoa! 6'4" lawyer, international man of great hair. How are you not married, Tony? I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm not very. New Zealanders are not. I think I'm going red. New Zealanders are not very good with compliments, and I'm an example of that. I don't know. I'm a workaholic. I work full time, and I do this channel 4 or 5 hours a day. So that could be the reason. I'm still relatively young, and because I've been overseas, I've really been focused more on the work, and so that's why I'm not married at the moment. But I do hope to be married one day and have children. That would be lovely, and to bring them up in New Zealand, because it's a lovely place to bring up children. It's a little bit boring if you're in your 20s, but it's a wonderful place to bring up children or to retire. Yeah, well, thank you very much for the kind words. Warrior One has thank you for the support and the cute dog emoji. I'll just read through some of the regular comments as well. Paul, waiting for Tony to do Rogan. Oh, that would be quite something. I don't know if I'd ever get to that stage, but I would actually. I don't know about Rogan. I don't think he'd take someone like me on. But when I leave China, I've been invited onto podcasts, and I've decided that podcasts are better to do in person, in studios, rather than online. And if I'm out of China, once I leave China, I can be fully open with all my responses without worrying about like being careful with what I communicate. With the channel, with the episodes, I can think about how I always say what I want to say, but I can say it in a way that's safe. If I'm in a podcast situation, I want to be able to just have a free and open conversation and not have to worry about that. So this year, when I do leave China, I will probably begin accepting these podcast invitations. So if you do have favorite podcasts, by the way, and you'd like to see me on them, feel free to in their comments or whatever mention this channel. This year I'll be doing more podcasts, so that would be amazing. I don't know if I don't think Rogan would ever be on the cards, but I'm happy to do anyone that has an audience that is interested in China. I'm happy to do that. I'm reading through some of the comments. Some great banter in the comments. Wonderful to see. It's really cool to actually have live interactions as well. I read the comments every day, but it's, you know, this comment will be from like 7 hours ago. It's great to see them fresh here. So thank you for the great banter and the wonderful, kind and supportive words. So Ning Yi Zhang, 30 Australian dollars. Thank you. Hi Tony, love your channel. When and where is your next meetup? Well, I just had a meetup in Sydney last week. The next meetup, well, I'll be returning to China in about a week. I've done some meetups in Shanghai, but I typically do not do meetups within the mainland. It's just a little bit dangerous to do meetups within the mainland. I will do them in Hong Kong. I still do them in Hong Kong. I may be in Hong Kong. In the next month or so, and I may be in Japan actually in the next month or so. So this is probably immediately where they will be. When I leave my job and leave China, I will be traveling much more around the world, and there will be many more meetups because I'll be meeting with. I'll be building networks around the world and doing more on-the-ground research in terms of countries' specific relations with China. It's an opportunity to travel and talk with experts around the world, do interviews on the channel, and do more meetups. So, but I will always let you know in the videos where these meetups will be, and it's always wonderful to do them. One of my favorite parts of traveling now is meeting you guys in cities around the world, and I do hope to get to the United States later this year. It'd be great to do some meetups in the US because we've got such an amazing community of Americans on the channel as well. So, Adrian Chan would love to have you do interviews. Bonnie Lin, Buddy Glazer, Peter Zion, Jordan. You know, Jordan, I think I worked with him actually. It's such a the expat community is so small in China. When I was finishing my master's degree, I actually worked for Didi, which is a ride-hailing company, sort of China's version of Uber, and I'm pretty sure I worked with him briefly. We were in a couple of meetings together. We're in different departments, and we're in a couple of meetings together. And I don't know whether he had his podcast back then. But yeah, it's funny. It's a small world. So yeah, we actually worked together briefly, and I think we worked on one project. I'm pretty sure that was him. And Pettis, of course, I would love to do. When I do interviews on the channel, Pettis would be an amazing guest to have. Very much an amazing guest to have. Thank you for the support. One Armed Bandit, come to Ireland. I'll put you up and show you all the sites, especially the ones off the beaten path. I would love that. Even though you're a bandit, I can see that you're also a gentleman. So thank you very much. Perhaps and one armed. To still do your banditry with one arm is very impressive. But no, in all seriousness, thank you for the invitation. I would love to visit Ireland. It is a beautiful country with a beautiful history, scarred, but also very beautiful. I love exploring the history and the architecture and the food of places when I go there, and I would love to visit Ireland. Just the UK generally, and then the England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, but also the Republic of Ireland. This is a part of the world that I really want to explore. So thank you for the invitation. Fred, New Zealand donation, it's good, it's wonderful It's wonderful to get support from fellow Kiwis. Thank you. Some beer money for when you're in Wellington. What is your favourite New Zealand beer? I would love to do a meetup in Wellington, to have the opportunity to go. This trip I actually didn't. I went to Sydney instead of doing a trip in New Zealand. Hopefully the next time I'm in New Zealand, I will do a trip to Wellington and will do a meetup there, because I know that there is actually quite a decent-sized China Update community in Wellington, and I lived in Wellington for many years. I did my law degree in Wellington, so I would love to go back and go to a bar, and hopefully, Fred, you'll be there, as well as others who are based in Wellington. Thank you very much for the support. Wow, Austin, incredibly generous donation there. Thank you very much. $100. That is very generous. Thank you, sir. You say, "Hey Tony, just wanted to say thanks for your help, understanding and keeping us up to date on China. I initially knew very little about China." I'm sorry, unfortunately this app has cut off a few of those words. So China, I think PRC, about China, to finding your channel about it a year ago. Sorry, Austin, you probably wrote this correctly. It's just the screen has cut it off just a little bit. Can I pull this out a little bit, maybe? This side? This side? This one? There we go. Okay. Very good. That's much better. Okay, now I can read this properly. Sorry about that. Let me start that again. I initially knew very little about China prior to finding your channel about a year ago, and now your daily videos are a cherished part of my daily routine. Well, that's incredibly kind of you to say. Both that as part of your routine. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, there are podcasts and there are channels that I have as part of my routine that I listen to every day. The idea that there are people that watch these videos and it's part of their own routine, especially if they're interested in China and I'm their China source, it's an honor and it's a tremendous source of motivation. And it's also one of the reasons why I always produce episodes at the same time, so that you can always rely on them coming out at the same time. So for over 1,200 videos over 5 years, it has always gone up at the same time. It may change if you have daylight savings, then that time for you locally will change, but it has always been 8:30 p.m. Beijing time. 8:30 p.m. Beijing, which is in the morning in North America, it is in the afternoon in Europe and Africa and the Middle East, and it is in the evening in Asia. And unfortunately, the country that gets screwed is New Zealand, which I'm sorry, fellow New Zealanders, but we're a very small place and we're very out of the way. But New Zealand is sort of, I think it's like 1:30 a.m. when it comes out in New Zealand. Fortunately, while I'm here, I can set it up and have it scheduled to release, so I can put it up in the evening and then go to sleep. But the time is always the same, so that when there is an episode, you know when it's going to come out, and it can be part of your routine. So it's wonderful to be able to join you for that routine when you have your coffee maybe in the morning. It really, the pleasure is all mine. And if the channel has helped you understand this country a little bit better, then for me, I couldn't ask for a better compliment. So thank you kindly. John Robertson has subscribed. Welcome, John, to the China Update community. It's wonderful to have you. It's wonderful to have you on board. Actually, Myline 8, responding to Austin, says, "Thanks for your support of one of the most important channels on YouTube." Yes, thanks. Thank you for all your support. For everyone, it's not just, financial support is incredibly important. I couldn't actually continue the channel without the financial support, but just the support and watching and liking and commenting is incredible. It's incredible. So I thank everyone for all the different ways that you support the channel. It is the motivation for me. And one armed bandit, just an FYI, I am a gentlewoman rather than a gentleman, but definitely a bandit. Well, it's wonderful. Thank you. A gentlewoman and a bandit. Very much would want to meet you now, for sure. Thank you for the clarification. Very good. We'll continue with the questions. Okay, so Andrew Robbie, he says, since the lockdowns, I've always been curious about how you maintain your safety and freedom from narrative interference. Is it just that foreigners have a little more latitude? Did you have any run-ins with dabai, police, or times when you doubted you could carry on with the channel? Does anything keep you up at night? Also, what's the best thing about China that nobody talks about? Congratulations on 100K. We're all rooting for you. Thank you, Andrew. I'm very much of a culture and an upbringing in New Zealand where you don't complain about things. I know it seems in the West at the moment that that's not very mainstream. It seems that a lot of people like to complain about things, but call me old-fashioned. That's sort of how I was raised. So I've never talked about this on the channel, but since this is a special Q&A and this is the question, I won't go into details, but there is a lot of risk doing what I do in China. Yes, there have been times where I stay up at night. There have been times where I've had knocks at the door that I didn't expect, and it was like a delivery person or it was the wrong door, and I've thought, okay, this is it, and I've grabbed my computer and hidden my computer, but then it hasn't been a problem. And the authorities know I exist, and I've been spoken to on more than one occasion. And the speaking to is basically that you need to be careful, or there'll be consequences. So there is risk there, but so far, and I hope this continues, and if this doesn't continue, I'd stop doing the channel. I wouldn't change stories. So far, it has not affected the narrative. There has never been, or like what I cover, there's never been a time where I've had a story where I think I need to cover this, but I'm too concerned for my safety. I cover the story. I just am careful with how I cover it. One of the things I do is I quote heavily people. I choose quotes that I think give a diversity of different views. So sometimes I quote people that I don't necessarily agree with, but I also quote people that I think do accurately articulate the situation. So I do both, and that's sort of how I communicate what needs to happen. That's how I communicate what needs to be communicated, essentially. I can't really go into details because actually going into the details would probably make things worse. What I will say is the concern from the authorities is more that I'm talking to people that are giving me privileged or confidential state secrets. And what I've always communicated to them is, no, I have networks, but I never ask for anything that is not in the public domain. Everything that I cover is in the public domain. And with my contacts, I always say, do not tell me anything that is not in the public domain. I think there is plenty that is already in the public, that's already out there that can be covered. Sometimes I might hear something that it's not a state secret, but it might be a bit more confidential. That will help inform what I present to you. But yeah, their concern is more that their concern is more that I'm getting state secrets from people that are in these sort of positions, which I don't do, and that's what I've communicated. The fact that I'm from New Zealand helps, because New Zealand has a fairly, it's not a troublesome relationship with China, so that helps. But, the fact of the matter is, someone could wake up one day and decide, this guy, we don't want him doing what he's doing here, and then that's it. And that's a very there'd be a very non-desirable outcome for me. And it could be anything from a long imprisonment to deportation or worse. I will not, like I said, I don't like to complain. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know there's the risk. That's just part of what has to happen to get on the ground analysis. I don't have any children that are there or anything like that. I don't have family there. So for me, that's just the responsibility you sort of take. And I'm very careful, and I think will be okay. And like I said, this year I'll probably be leaving China, and I will continue covering China as I always have, and then hopefully that anxiety will be gone. But yeah, this will probably be, unless I'm in a podcast and someone asked specifically about this will probably be the only time I talk about this, because like I said, I come from a upbringing where it's, if you take on a risk, then you shouldn't complain about it. And I know the risk that I've taken on, and I accept that. And there are people that take on far greater risks every day all around the world. And so if you take it on yourself, then you shouldn't complain about it. Yeah, but because this is a Q&A and this was the question, I thought I would address that. But you need not worry. I am very careful, and this sort of stress or anxiety is just part of the territory, or part of the cost of doing what I do. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. No need to keep complaining about it. But thank you, Andrew, for the question. Much appreciated. Now, there's a lot of messages that came through during that. Thank you for all the amazing support, everybody. I'm just reading through some of your comments. Very, very supportive. Oscar, nice work, people. It's great. For the love for Tony. Lashik says, Tony, in the USA, we call one-armed bandits slot machines at casinos. Very good. Paul has described my particular pair of organs as big. I won't quote him directly, but it's kind of you to say. Matt, welcome to thank you for joining as a supporter. It's tremendous. I appreciate having you on board. Corey, wow, another very, very generous piece of support from Corey Stewart. Admire your courage. Thank you, sir. I think you're a sir. My apologies if you're a madam, but I think you're a sir. Thank you very much for the support here and for the words of support. Like I said, I think firefighters and soldiers, and there are many people that are very courageous. I wouldn't call what I do courageous. I think it's just a calculated risk, and I'm very passionate about what I do, and it's because I have your support, all of your support, it makes it much easier. So deeply appreciated. Thank you again, sir. I think sir. My apologies if that's incorrect. Clip BitLocker. I always been curious, what is the popular entertainment in China? Any Chinese shows, cartoons, or YouTubers you recommend? I don't follow. I don't really watch Chinese like television or films. You have stuff like shows and television and music. KTV used to be, so karaoke, KTV is what it's called. It used to be very popular in China, especially with students. It still sort of is, but it's not as, I don't think it's not as prevalent as it used to be. A lot of Chinese, they consume their media on their phones. They don't have computers or big TVs, smart TVs. They will consume almost all their media on their phones, and so apps, games, platforms, social media platforms on the phone, and short, like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, sort of short form content is probably the most popular form of media consumption, which is probably why TikTok was created and was successful, because they had this huge market within China where they were able to develop a particularly powerful algorithm for short video consumption. And then they were able to take that and launch it around the world. And that's probably why they were successful, because that's such a popular medium of media consumption in China. So yeah, there's that. There's also Chinese, you go to colleges, they'll play basketball and stuff like that. I don't think sport is as popular. So I come from the Anglophone world. I think in places like New Zealand and Australia, Canada, the US, it's very common, like growing up, kids will have like a summer sport and a winter sport. In my country, for example, in winter we play rugby. There's also football or soccer. In summer, cricket, a game of kings, which perhaps Americans might not be as familiar with. It's a very strange game, but it's very popular. The Chinese aren't quite as sporty, I think. They play sports, but it's not quite as prevalent as you see in countries like in the English-speaking world. Shannon, thank you very much for the support there. Deeply appreciated. Let's continue. Now, I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this video to go for this long. I thought maybe we would talk for 30-40 minutes and then I'd run out of stuff to say, or that you would get sick of me and leave. But we're all still here, so I actually, in about 10 minutes, I may actually lose the space. So if that happens, so there may be about 10 minutes left. But if that doesn't happen, I will continue. But just letting you know that there may be another 10 minutes or so, and I may have to sort of end things quickly because I'll lose my access to the space. I didn't think it would take 2.5 hours. But this, Lashik says, weekly cough. Yes, I mean, this is why I've done this actually, to see whether this sort of thing would be possible. I don't think I'd do a Q&A every week, but something like a week in review and then perhaps a short Q&A at the end would be might be something that's worth looking into. It will have to be when I leave China because the internet in China is just simply not robust enough to do a live stream of any sort of quality that would be acceptable. I should say now, for those who have been here through most of this, I mean, it's incredible that you'd sit and listen to me talk about myself for 5 minutes, let alone a few hours. I salute your persistence and your stamina. But for everyone who's come in, even just for a few minutes, thank you very much for coming along. This isn't the end. I'm just saying my thank yous now in case I may have to jump off quickly, and I don't want it to be insincere when I quickly have to say thank you. So let me just say my deepest appreciations, and let me also just say that I'm very excited about the year ahead. It's concerning what we're seeing a lot of. We're in a period of tremendous geopolitical uncertainty and instability. The Chinese economy is in a very bad way, but it's also an incredibly consequential time in our lives and in the world. And words cannot describe how much of an honor it is that I get to follow this and then share it with an audience of this size, with this community, and to have a community as thoughtful and as engaging and as intelligent as you, as we follow this country and this region through such a consequential period of history. Like, I feel that in 50 years, I hope I live another 50 years, I'll look back and feel deep gratitude that I could follow these developments and share it with this community. And I think it will be one of the highlights of my life. And I think this year is going to be a big year for China and the world, China-US relations, China-Europe relations, China's neighborhood relations within China itself, especially with the economy. It could well be a very dangerous year. The years ahead could be very dangerous, but we'll be following it every day, and it's a tremendous honor to be able to share this with you all. And so, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this year. Whatever happens, very much. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to kill it. I just got a little bit emotional saying that, but let me just say, the poverty of human language, I cannot express these. So let me just say it simply. Thank you for being with part of this journey this year, and very much looking forward to following the country along with you all. So, and I'm reading the comments as well. Incredibly, Ian Armstrong, this Tony bloke, way too modest. I don't know about that, but thank you. That's very absolutely keep up the good work, Tony. I appreciate your reports and your live stream, Tony. Thank you everybody for the support. So yes, if Oh, new subscriber, Robert, welcome to the community. Welcome to China Update. Thank you for joining. So yeah, those are my thanks. If suddenly, maybe in the next 5-10 minutes, that I suddenly have to get off, I just wanted to just say my thanks and my appreciation here so that I could get it out. So if we quickly have to dart off, then yeah, that is done. But for now, I will continue with the questions. Christian Nordville asks, do you have permanent residency in China yet? If not, would you accept it if offered? No, I do not have permanent residency. So I work, and I have this as a business. So I have a special visa, which is renewed every 2 years. It was just recently renewed. I would never accept permanent residency. I have no plans on staying in China permanently. And also, some people may laugh at this or roll their eyes, but you may call me old-fashioned, but I believe that that if you become a permanent resident of a country, you should actually try and become part of that country. And I'm very proud and happy to be a New Zealander, and China is not a system that I want to really be part of or support. So I would never accept permanent residency. Very good. I think I may have to. By the way, I should let you know my brother is actually sitting with me, so I'm going to just talk to him for a moment. Please forgive me. I think the Drapes people are here. Right. I might actually just speak to them and see whether they can give us a bit more time or whether they really need to start.
Yeah. If you want to chuck it on BRB and mute.
Yes. So what I'm going to do... So I may be about to lose access to the space because the channel's gone, the live stream's gone longer than I thought. There are still a lot of people watching, so I would like to continue for a little bit longer. But what I'm going to do is just put the live stream on mute and a be right back screen for a couple of minutes while I work out the logistics. Maybe that we have to end shortly. If that's the case, that's the case. But may also have a little bit more time. So let me just quickly confirm those details. So I will be back in a few minutes. So hopefully I'll see you shortly. Yes, I'll see you in a couple of moments. Be right back. Okay, we're back. Thank you for waiting. So I am about to lose access to this space. I am sorry. Like I said, I did not expect this to go for 2.5 hours. I thought that you would be sick of me after about an hour. So there's a couple of options. I'm seeing in the comments that there's still a lot of demand for this. We can either do a part 2, I can think about that, which I can do before I leave New Zealand, or we can just wait for another event sometime in the future, or the other option is maybe in the future there'll be special weekend review episodes on a Sunday, which would also be a live stream. So I'll give some thought into that, but like I said, fortunately I took the time to say my thank yous before, very much from the heart and deeply appreciated. Maybe I was told that at the end of these questions there is a quick fire round, so I'll quickly perhaps go through some of these quick fire questions, and then perhaps we can end it here. I'm seeing make it monthly. Part 2 would be great. Maybe 150k special. See, that's also another option, right? If we get to 150, I can do another Q&A. I think I'm sequel. A lot of people are very supportive. Yeah, perhaps there'll be an opportunity to do another one of these when we hit another milestone. It's already been 2.5 hours, and it's really been wonderful. It's great to be able to interact with you in real time rather than reading. I enjoy reading the comments, but it's great to actually see them in real time. Incredible support, thank you. We haven't even really scratched the surface in terms of some of these questions, but I was told there was a quick fire round at the end of this. Rapid fire questions. So I'll go through a couple of these. Are from JD, who's been very supportive of the channel. When and how was your interest in the PRC sparked? Sort of already discussed that. What type of car beyond your everyday drive would you drive? Well, in New Zealand, it's good just to drive like a Toyota or a Ford, like a sort of a mid-sized SUV. I mean, I would love in summer in New Zealand, it would be amazing to have a Porsche convertible, but I don't think, even if I had the money, I don't think I could ever justify buying a Porsche. Maybe in a few years when I have a midlife crisis, I'll do that. I don't know, but that would be something cool, at least to drive for a few days in the beautiful summer weather in New Zealand along the coast. That would be very nice. What's your favorite bourbon, and do you take it neat? Not a bourbon drinker myself, but my father is a huge bourbon drinker, and he likes Jim Beam, and I think he mixes it. I'll ask my brother. He mixes it with Coke? Yeah, he mixes it with Coke, so I don't think that is neat. Did you dress up for Halloween? If so, as what? I actually haven't dressed up for Halloween since I was a kid. In New Zealand, it's really just children that dress up for Halloween. I know in North America it's much bigger, but I haven't dressed up for years, so I'm afraid I can't remember what I dressed up. Probably something very dorky. Do you see yourself leaving the PRC? Yes, probably this year. It could well be in the next few months. We'll have to see. What are the odds that you'll meet up in DC within the next 4 years? I could well be later this year. There's going to be, I may be going to an event later this year in DC, and if I do, I will definitely be doing a meetup. I'll also there are people in government and private practice that have wanted to speak to me, so that would be that. Any chance you're working on a book? I would love to work on a book. I'm just too busy, but I do have some ideas of books I would love to write on China, especially the economy, to be announced. But I'm currently not working on a book, but it is something I would like to work on. Do you have any political aspirations in New Zealand? Not currently, but never say never. If I was ever get into New Zealand politics, which I do not have any intentions at this point, I would probably actually like to work with local government, because I think local government is underappreciated for local government really affects people's lives in a lot of ways, and I think local government can really get in the way of business and get in the way of people's lives. And I think that our current local government here has interfered, I think, a lot. And if I got into politics, it would be local government, and basically just trying to reduce the size of the local government involvement. National government's a different matter, but the local government, I think, really needs. It's a little bit bloated at the moment. If I ever got involved, it would probably be at the local level. Does your hard work help or hinder your personal life? Well, I love what I do, so that's great. I've had friends, and I've had a woman that I've dated in the past that have said that I'm too much of a workaholic, so I don't know, maybe it hinders it in that way, but I love what I do, and I'm incredibly thankful that I can work on this channel, and like I said before, continue to follow what I think is going to be a very important and interesting year. and I'm deeply grateful that I can be on this journey with you all, and I very much appreciate your support. Cole, thank you for the support there. Martin, thank you very much for your support. Do you ever watch Lawai and 7ZA China show? I haven't really watched them. I hear they're very popular, but I don't actually watch other China channels, so I've never really watched them. But I know they're very popular, but I haven't watched, so I couldn't give an opinion on their content. I'm sure it's wonderful what they do. Another YouTube, thank you for your work. Wife is from Shanghai, and I share with her. I hope she enjoys that content. Thank you for the support. Like I said, this year is going to be a big year. I'm so excited to follow it with you all. Thank you for the support. Thank you for sitting through 2.5 hours of this. Like I said, I didn't think most people would sit through 5 minutes of me talking about myself, but there we go. I hope to do another one of these in the future. This has been a tremendous success. Thank you for all the amazing support. There'll be a Monday. We'll have a regular China update episode. Very much. I'll be starting writing it shortly, so I better start working on that. Wherever you are, if you're in North America, have a great afternoon, evening. If you're in Europe, have a good night. If you're in Asia, good morning. New Zealand or Australia, good afternoon. Thank you everybody for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Have a good week. And I look forward to, in a few hours, jumping back in. I will see you all in several hours. Thank you and goodbye.